Hello and welcome to our Letter of the Day Ideas video. This video is for homeschool moms or teachers, anybody that needs some ideas for a letter of the day, how to teach phonics or reading or handwriting, just some overall great ideas to fill up your preschoolers' day or your pre-K students' day. This today N was for nest, so our theme was nest, and we decorated N like a bird might decorate a nest with pieces of scrap newspaper and yarn and fabric and cotton. In the story today, my nest is best, or I guess it's called the best nest. The birds look around and they find broom straws and hair and all kinds of string and pillow stuffing in the story to build their nest. And so that's kind of the idea behind decorating the letter N today. So after that, we talked about the letter N, how to write the letter N. And I'll just show you how I did that today in my online classes. So we just made a number 1. Go back to the top and then slide down and go back straight up. So 1, slide down and straight back up. You can get your child to practice using the handwriting house paper. You can get a copy of this free at my website. Make a 1, slide down and walk straight up. So that's the big letter N. They can practice a couple of rows of those. The little N looks like this. You just make a little number 1 and then just go over 1 time like that. So 1 and then just kind of bounce over 1 time. That's the little N, and it goes downstairs on the handwriting house. So a little 1 and then just kind of go over 1 time, just kind of bounce over 1 time. So that was our handwriting time today. We did something really fun for the sound of letter N, and I'll demonstrate that for you now. Letter N says n, n, n. You have to take your tongue and put it on the top of your mouth behind your teeth and hum n, n, n. Letter N says n, 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 as in no. Every one of our letters has a hand motion, and the hand motion for N is n, n, no. So we played Headbands, and I don't know if you've ever played this game or if you have this game, but if you don't have it, it is an excellent game for preschoolers and for pre-K age and kindergarten. For any age, we still play it. I have big kids and grown kids, and we still play it sometimes. So I'm just going to put a card on my head, and I'm going to ask you some questions, and you can say yes or n, n, no to practice that N sound. All right. Is it a person? No. Is it a thing like a pencil? No. Is it an insect? No. Is it a fish? No. Is it an animal? Yes. Okay. Is it an animal that walks on 4 legs? No. Is it an animal that has feathers? Yes. It's a bird, an animal with feathers. Okay. Is it an animal that you might keep inside your house as a pet? No. Is it an animal that you might see at the zoo? No. Is it an animal that might be found on a farm? Yes. Is it an animal that gives you milk? No. Is it an animal that you can ride on? No. Is it an animal that gives you eggs? Yes. Is it a chicken? Yes, it's a chicken. So letter N says n, 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 as in no. And you did a good job saying yes and no and helping me figure out If you want to, you could even make a headbands game. Just cut out some pictures from magazines or print some off, and then just you can, just find a way to make a little, even use like a headband this way with a little piece of tape. So anyway, that's the idea for the letter. And we did some blending, and we practiced reading the word nest today. So for math, we did a pattern sheet, and it looks like this. A pattern is just something that continues to repeat. So here we have a bluebird and a brown bird, and then a bluebird and a brown bird, and then a bluebird, and what would be next? A brown bird. Good. And then the next one has a nest and a red bird. Nest, red bird. Nest, red bird. Nest, and what's next? Red bird. Red bird. Good. And then the next one is nest, bluebird, redbird. Nest, bluebird. What's next? Redbird. After the bluebird is redbird. The last one has a brown bird, bluebird, nest. Brown bird, bluebird, nest is next. And you can get a link to where you can find that worksheet over at my website. It has the lesson plan for this week there. And for our music and movement time, I just had these bird movement cards. And so we waddled like a duck. I'll just show you what they are. We pecked like a chicken. We hatched like a chick. So we just got down really little, and then we just kind of hatched out like a chick. A long time ago when I taught pre-K, we took an oversized white t-shirt, and the kids took turns getting like kind of inside that t-shirt and then cracking out. And that was a lot of fun. I remember doing that years ago. This one says strut like a peacock. So we just stretched our arms out really wide and kind of strutted around like a peacock. Then this one says flap like a parrot. So we first flapped our wings. Stand like a flamingo. So stand on one foot. And the last one is turn your head like an owl. So we just kind of turned our head this way and that way like an owl. So that was our music and movement time. It was really just movement today. For art, we made this super cute. I'm just going to stretch and grab it. We just made this super cute paper bag nest. We just rolled down the sides of the paper bag all the way down to the end. If you have Easter grass, you can put that inside, go outside and find real grass and leaves and twigs, or you can just cut paper grass. And then I turned a plastic Easter egg into a baby bird just by adding some wiggly eyes and a little triangle. So that was our art project for today. And then for science, we explored bird beaks, and that was a lot of fun. And I'm going to move the camera so you can see that, and I'll show you now. For science today, we talked about the 5 types of bird beaks. One type of bird beak is kind of like a straw. It's really long and slender and great for poking down into the flowers and sucking out the nectar or the juice in the flowers. One bird that has this kind of beak is a hummingbird. Another kind of beak that some birds have is a really sharp beak. These kinds of sharp beaks are great for tearing, kind of like these scissors into this marshmallow. A bird that has this kind of beak is an eagle. Another kind of beak reminds me of these chopsticks. It's a beak that can dig down into the dirt and grasp and pull up worms. A bird that has this kind of beak is a robin. Another kind of beak is kind of like these tweezers. It's really small and slender and can pick up tiny little bugs. A bird that has this kind of beak is a woodpecker. It can poke its little beak into some little holes on the tree and pull out the little tiny bugs. And finally, one kind of beak that some birds have is just reminds me of this wrench. And the wrench can kind of pick up these neat nuts and crack them just like the beak of a cardinal. Very powerful jaws for breaking into nuts and seeds. Okay, so those were the 5 main types of bird beaks. For story time today, we read the story, The Best Nest by P.D. Eastman, and I'll read it to you now. Mr. Bird was happy. He was so happy he had to sing. This was Mr. Bird's song. I love my house, I love my nest. In all the world, my nest is best. Then Mrs. Bird came out of the house. It's not the best nest, she said. I'm tired of this old place. I don't like it. Let's look for a new place right now. So they left the old place to look for a new one. This place looks nice, said Mr. Bird. Let's move in here. But somebody else had already moved in. So they looked at another house. This one looks nice, said Mr. Bird, and there's nobody in it. You're wrong, said Mrs. Bird. This house belongs to a foot. So they went on looking. I like this one, said Mr. Bird. It has a pretty red flag on the roof. I've always wanted a house with a flag, said Mrs. Bird. Maybe this place will be all right. But it was not all right. I guess I made a mistake, said Mr. Bird. You make too many mistakes, said Mrs. Bird. I'm going to pick the next house. And here it is, right here. They flew in. They looked around. Isn't it too big? Asked Mr. Bird. I like this big place, said Mrs. Bird. This is the place to build our new nest. They went right to work. They needed many things to build their nest. First, they got some hay. Then they got some soda straws and broom straws and some sweater string. They got some stocking string and mattress stuffing. They got some horse hair. They got some man hair. Soon they had all the hay, all the straw, all the string, all the stuffing, all the horsehair, and all the man hair that they could carry. They took it all back to build their nest. Mr. and Mrs. Bird worked very hard. It took them the rest of the morning to finish their nest. This nest is really the best, said Mrs. Bird. I want to stay here forever. Mr. Bird was very happy too. He flew to the top of his house. He sang his song again. I love our house, I love our nest. In all the world, our nest is best. He was so busy singing that he didn't even see Mr. Parker coming. Every day at 12 o'clock, Mr. Parker came to the church. Mr. Parker came to pull a rope. The rope went up to the bird's new nest. The rope rang the big bell right under Mrs. Bird's nest. Bong, bong, bong. Mrs. Bird got out of there as fast as she could fly. Bong, bong, bong. When Mr. Bird came in, all he could see was a mess of hay and string and stuffing and horsehair and man hair and straws. But where was Mrs. Bird? I will look for her until I find her, said Mr. Bird. He looked high, he looked low, he looked everywhere for Mrs. Bird. He looked down into a chimney, achoo, but Mrs. Bird wasn't there. He looked down into a water barrel, hello, but Mrs. Bird wasn't there. Then he saw a big fat cat. There was a big fat smile on the big fat cat's face. There were some pretty brown feathers near the fat cat's mouth. Mr. Bird began to cry. "Oh dear," he cried, "this big fat cat has eaten Mrs. Bird." Mr. Bird flew off. "I'll never see Mrs. Bird again," he cried. It was getting dark. It began to rain. It rained harder and harder. Mr. Bird could not see where he was going. Crash! Mr. Bird bumped into something. It was his old house, that old house that Mrs. Bird didn't like. "I'll go inside," said Mr. Bird. "I'll rest here until the rain stops." Mr. Bird went in, and there was Mrs. Bird sitting there singing. "I love my house, I love my nest. In all the world this nest is best," she sang. "You here?" gasped Mr. Bird. "I thought you didn't like this old nest." Mrs. Bird smiled. "I used to not like it, but a mother bird can change her mind. You see, there's no nest like an old nest for a brand new baby bird." And when the egg popped open, the new bird thought so too. The end. I think that was a fun story for a day of learning about letter N is for nest. I'll see you next time for letter O is for octopus. Goodbye.